All right, good evening, fellow Protectors. Welcome to Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. Greg here with you. Got Dustin, got Brad with you guys. We're just going to dive right into this tonight. Tonight's episode I titled Why You Need to Destroy Your Mental Maps. This conversation is very, very important, and I'm going to give you some really cool things that are going to be, you're going to be able to walk away and instantly functionalize on this information and make yourself infinitely safer. And again, it all has to do with the power of mental maps. So we're going to talk about what mental mapping is, why it's important, why you need to, understand this, train this, and again, give you some very functional takeaways for this. So we're going to cut to the intro. We're going to be back in a few seconds. We're going to dive right into why you got to destroy these mental maps. So hang with us. Every day I hear more stories of good people being brutally assaulted and murdered by some individual who has a repeat history of violent offenses, drug addiction, and mental health issues, who is free to walk the streets in the same city where I live, work, and where I am raising my two daughters. Well, I'm tired of screaming at the TV, and enough is enough. Throughout history, there have always been men willing to answer the call to the threats against our way of life. Well, today, that threat is right outside our doors, on our streets, in our neighborhoods, on our public transportation system, outside the places we work, and even outside of our children's schools. My new mission is to create and train a group of men that believe in the right to life and value the freedom a man has to protect his life, his family, and his property. I'm Greg LeBuff. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. Okay, we're back. Tonight we're talking about mental mapping, and I titled this, Why You Need to Destroy Your Mental Maps. First off, let's just talk about what mental maps are, because a lot of people aren't familiar with this terminology. Mental mapping is basically, it's a psychological process that basically allows people, that it's kind of like our spatial awareness. It's like how we're processing our everyday life, and it happens on different levels. So an idea of this is a real simple example of this is most people get up every day and they go to work, and so you drive the same route to work. Most people shop at the same grocery store, and when they go to that grocery store, they park on the same they park in the same part of the parking lot every single time. So basically what's happening is we're creatures of habits, and we are constantly mapping out our environments, especially the environments that we frequent, right? So just like most people, if you go into their house, they have their favorite chair, or they sit in the same section of the couch. They sleep on the same side of the bed. These are all examples of mental mapping, right? And this has a very, very, very or plays a very important role in weaponizing or being able to protect against violence. So what I want to do very specifically in this podcast is give some real tangible takeaways. Because if people, again, we're going to go a little bit deeper into what mental mapping is as it pertains to violence and being able to protect yourself. But I want to give people some actual things that they can do. Literally, we run this podcast every single week, every Thursday. So I'm looking at this like in the next 7 days. If you want to dramatically increase your safety, if you want to take a massive step forward in weaponizing, then I'm going to give you some real tangible takeaways to do that. You can do it over the next week, and I guarantee you in 7 days from this point, you're going to be a completely different type of person. So it's a very, very powerful episode. So hopefully people really stick with us to the end of this. Just real quick, I know it wasn't a real deep setup, but for you guys, just share your quick visceral opinions on mental mapping.
So one thing that jumped out at me, like you said, with just even that more limited introduction than we usually have, the thing that hit me and I just kind of jotted it down was like, if you remove routine, you remove risk. And it just speaks to what you just talked about as far as how people tend to be creatures of habit. They tend to park in the same place. They tend to drive to work the same route, on and on and on. And of course, if you're talking about violence and risk of, someone seeking you out, let's say, then obviously the more routine you are, then essentially you're an easier target. So when you remove those types of routines, then it can remove risk from your life, essentially.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good synopsis of mental mapping.
Yeah, my initial thoughts aren't too far off of Dustin's. my head went to, again, just like being in your comfort zone, being complacent, and having that element of predictability that comes with those things. And like, again, that's like where Dustin said about the routines. And I think that what we're talking about is, we always say control follows awareness. So if you know that you have this kind of predefined mental map in your head, then when you're working to change that mapping with intent, I believe that you're actually your ability to change the way that you're thinking, right? And change the way that you're perceiving things. So I know that it kind of forces you to really be diligent with changing your thought process. So like when you said that it's a very powerful process, I think you nailed it, because there's a lot of depth into probably where we could go with this conversation for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive into this. I really liked the saying of remove the routine and remove the risk, because just overall, like on a very simplistic level, that's exactly referencing mental mapping as one of those components. So let's just unpack this a little bit, right? Because when it comes to the psychology behind mental mapping, it is basically that is the information that we use when we're making decisions, in like when we're planning activities or planning routes or whatever it is. You're always building a framework of kind of familiarity. Now, this familiarity, what it does is we often have the same, which calls life factor moments. We talk about how violent criminals are often looking, because remember, they're opportunistic, right? So they're looking for life factor moments, which means moments where people are just caught at a much more vulnerable state. So this might be an example, like you go to the bank. Most people, I shouldn't say everybody, most people tend to go on high alert when they're using a bank machine, like out in public. So you walk into the bank machine, you're a little bit more situationally aware. Your head's on a swivel. They go up, they're punching it. They put their card in, they're punching in their numbers, taking out their money. They're a little more vigilant. They're a little bit more aware. Then what happens is they get their money, they go out, they walk out to the car, they're watching. They get in their car, they shut the car door. The second they shut the car door, many people go into a life factor moment. Because oftentimes when you've done an activity like that, now all of a sudden when you're in quote unquote the safety of your car, all of a sudden your situational awareness kind of shuts off. And people then pull out their little list and okay, go to bank, get out money, done. Where am I going next? That's when they pull their phone out, they scroll, they're checking to see if they got a text message or emails or whatever they're doing, but they're parked right out front of the bank. So it's like that's a life factor moment. People have these habituated moments of vulnerability. And that might only be, you might say, well, yeah, but I sit there for a minute or two. Yeah, it takes a fraction of a second or two for violent criminals to strike. And so if they're targeting the bank, which people go kind of hyper alert on, but then they tend to forget the pre and the post. So yes, when they get out of the car and they're using the bank machine, they're in a different state of awareness. But when they get there and they park, and they're like, well, I'm not using the bank machine yet, therefore I'm safe. There is a life factor moment, right? There is just so many different examples of little life factor moments where we have this inattention. Now, as this ties into mental mapping, is I want people to think of it this way. Think of a term called unintentional blindness. And the more familiar, so Dustin, you referenced routine. And so when we have these routines, if you remove routines, you remove risk. But familiarity breeds comfort, and familiarity and comfort can breed complacency. But it's not just like, oh, I'm comfortable here, I'm relaxed. There's no threats here. Inattentional blindness is because mental mapping actually causes inattentional blindness because your brain fills in blanks because it's familiar with the routine. It's familiar with like the grocery store, the parking lot, the bank machine, the bank you use. If people really sit back, you look at how many habituated mental maps we run in a day. Just the route you drive to and from work. This is, and just as a side note, when people's mental maps are broken, it emotionally charges people. Just think about anytime that there's construction on your route to or from work or picking the kids up or whatever it is, and you have to detour. Oh, people are fucking livid because they're being forced out of their mental map. And so now it activates us in a different way. So I'm just trying to anchor how powerfully implanted mental mapping is into all of us. Okay, we all do this. Now, let's get back to the inattentional blindness. It's like your brain fills in details. So if you're in a place that you're very familiar, you go to your grocery store, you tend to park in the same side of the parking lot, you tend to park relatively close to the same stall each time, like that area. Your brain has seen it so many times and it's built in this map that you know that there's a tree here, the door's over here, other cars are parked, all this type of stuff. You will literally sensory gate pieces of information. There is blind spots within that environment that has been created by your mental map. That's why, like, you ever see these, I mean, they're all over Instagram, TikTok, whatever the fuck, but these videos where people, like they scare somebody, right? You'll get somebody coming home, walking into their garage, or you get somebody walking in their house, whatever it is. What amplifies a startle flinch response, especially in an area that is familiar, is people are often walking through their house, walking to their garage, or like driving up to their house, backing in, whatever it is. They're operating off mental maps. This is why when people are driving, anyone ever drive, and all of a sudden you kind of snap back into awareness and you've gone 2 or 3 kilometers, made 2 or 3 turns, and you don't remember doing it. And you're like, fuck, like, where was I? Like, you were driving, you were paying attention, but not really. You were running off mental maps. Like, so there's an inattentional blindness that is occurring. And so in areas where we are very, or even just mildly familiar, we actually have increased risk, right? Because that familiarity, that mental map, and the stronger the mental map is, the more that counters our quote unquote situational awareness to a large degree, because we're just comfortable. This is why too, if you travel and you're in a new city, in a new neighborhood, or a different country, whatever it is, we're often on there's a different level of awareness operating in most of us, right? Because it's all unfamiliar. We don't have the mental maps built yet. And imagine, if you go, you travel and you're in a new country and you're staying in a hotel or something like that is all new to you. Think about how quickly you can find a level of routine and comfort, like how quickly we can build mental maps. The first day, maybe the first 2 days, everything's a little uncertain and you're not sure this and this, but you start just creating these maps very quickly, and there's a little store, I can go pick up some food here, I can go there. You get some feedback from locals, people at the front desk of the hotel say, where are you going? Oh, I wouldn't walk down there. You just collect information very, very quickly. You build out these mental maps, and now all of a sudden, you're kind of operating off this mental mapping. Now, when you are still someplace fairly new to you, you tend to have a different level of hopefully you're still got a different situational awareness kind of going on. But let's come back to our day-to-day routines. The most dangerous, what was it they used to say back in the day, that you were more likely to get into a serious motor vehicle collision within 4 blocks of your house or something like that? It was within a real close proximity to your house. Why is that? Because you get more complacent. The more familiar you are, the more you operate off mental maps, which has massive chunks of inattentional blindness. So hopefully we're starting to kind of paint the picture of why this is important. Do you guys have anything you want to kind of add in that to strengthen that or reinforce in that?
Actually, maybe just a question, and kind of not an analogy at all, actually. I don't know why I said analogy. I'm not the analogy guy to begin with. So, but so if we have this mental map, for some reason, I'm picturing the grocery store at my house, by my house, all the time, the Safeway.
Yeah.
And, just because I'm that's what popped in my head. You said bank, you said grocery store. Those two are next to each other, and that's
Yep.
where my head went.
You're like, that's where I go.
But like I vision like somebody walking through that environment that I could see clear as day, and then they have this unintentional blindness, right? They're going about, maybe they're walking from the bank to the grocery store because they happen to be next together, and then there's a moment of, we said unintentional blindness, but then there's something that demands their focus, right? Something of critical importance, violence, aggression, whatever that happens to be. And I know that there's life factor moments. So how much does that magnify, like when you are in that unintentional blindness, you kind of have like the blinders on, you're going about doing your day, and then now you get sucked into it because it's like, like obviously we can say, hey, you pick something up, you see the threat cues, you do this, but when you negate all that stuff, like that's got to be quite traumatic, and like you're completely blindsided because you're not even seeing anything.
Yeah. Yeah, see, like I love that you brought this up. It really frames it up nicely to talk about this because let's take the example of like your grocery store and your bank being close together. So you go do a little bit of banking and you walk into the grocery store. When you walk out of your bank and you're going to the grocery store and you have a mental map, you don't look up and go, where's the door? Which, like from my bank, what's the most efficient way? Nobody goes, okay, the bank's here, the store's over here. Nobody goes and walks a mile out of the way and then comes back. Like we tend to have figured out, I have the mental map, I'm heading to the store. So your head goes down. Or you're walking, but you're not really looking because your mental map is so you are looking, but you're in your mental map. Now, what I want to get with this though, it's not like you just zone out. Yeah. Because there's lots of people that go, I don't zone out, I'm paying attention. Let me add another aspect. Let's look at this from the criminal's perspective. I have a belief, and people can agree or disagree, but let me put it forth and then you make your own decision. Most bad guys, let's look, there's the posturing type predator and then there's the blitzers. Let's go with the blitzer because the blitzer loves to ambush, so they don't want to be seen. And they go from ambush to overwhelm to destruction. So they're like a shark. The sharks are hunting. And when the shark wants to eat, you know how you're in a shark attack? You're already up 6 feet in the air being bitten in half. That's a shark attack. If a shark comes up and bites you and then releases you, yes, he attacked you, but it wasn't a full-out attack. He wasn't sure what the fuck you were, so he's probing. Now, unfortunately, a probe from a great white shark or something like that could often end in death. But that's where you'll get a lot of people that get bit by a shark. Shark fucks off, doesn't eat them, doesn't come back and keep attacking them. It just probes, goes, figures out that, fuck, this ain't my food source, and I'm gone. But a shark attack, boom. You're already bitten in half because it was confirmed, thought you were sealed. Anyways, the point is this. Bad guys, blitzers, they don't want to be seen. So imagine in between your bank and your grocery store, there is this blitzer type predator. He is trying to camouflage himself. Whether they know this intuitively, like they just, because of experience, they have figured this stuff out. They might not be consciously aware of what they're doing and why it works, but the point is they've learned through experience, or they are fucking smart enough to consciously know. But a bad guy, he picks a spot between the bank and the grocery store. And this spot does not have to be hidden in the shadows or behind something like most people think it would be. He is going to stand virtually out in the open. He's going to stand where most people would stand, where it is normal. Because somebody that is just in their mental map, is just walking, is going to sensory gate them. There's going to be intentional blindness. Now, what I said, people might agree or disagree. Most violent criminals, even the blitzers, the ones that are trying to be camouflaged, they fucking suck at it. Yeah. They're not that great. Do you know what I mean? They're not. Why? Because they fucking don't have to be. Like, people just aren't paying attention. People are in the routines. Think about that grocery store. 90 probably, I have no statistics for this. This is just a guess, but I would say probably 95% of all people visiting that grocery store do it habitually. That's their grocery store. So when bad guys go and target an area, they know that the majority of people coming to that bank or going to that grocery store or wherever it happens to be, parking at the movie theater, most people have been there before. They're parking in relatively the same spot that they always park in. They're running their mental maps, and therefore there's inattentional blindness. All they have to do is not do what you said, Brad, which is don't do something super overt like a flashing neon sign saying, hey, and they're doing all this stuff where people might go, geez, that's different. That's off baseline. I don't normally see that. But that's why you'll see bad guys. If you can see them stand in a parking lot looking and identifying their targets and kind of looking around and, hey, okay, who's looking? Hands going in pockets. They're doing very overt things, but they're doing it in a flow or in a manner that is congruous with the environment they're operating in. So it sticks, it blends in with the mental map. So yes, all of a sudden somebody that, becomes the victim of this type of situation, now it's fractured. That mental map is broken and people are, kind of like, what the fuck? And they're put into a startle flinch. They're put into a reaction mode. And so yes, that amplifies all of the negative things that the bad guy wants to amplify and the good guys, don't want amplified. And this is why this becomes such an important thing. I just want to reiterate one thing, then you can give your feedback off that. If you don't consciously break your mental maps, which is what we're going to start sharing and talking about these things, you have mental maps. Everybody does. And you have blind spots. And this is why what I want to share with people tonight is how you break those. You don't just break those by going, oh, I'm aware of this, therefore I will be more cautious. Or I will, no. Because there's lots of people, I can just hear people, their thoughts going, not me. I'm always looking around. Well, the way that you look around, the way that you always look around is a mental map. It's not enough to just go, I'm always looking at people. I'm always looking in cars. I'm always casing it. That's a habituated pattern. And you're going to have an intentional blindness, which is why I want to share the drills and exercises that I want to share, because it's causing this inattentional blindness and increasing our risk because it is the way the physiology works, the way the psychology works. It's the way we're wired, the way that we build maps. You have to actually have a way to break that rhythm and change up the routine. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yep, for sure.
It was kind of something popped in my head. I don't know if this is what you were going to say, but, teaching people how to purposely break their own mental maps, because if they don't do it, someone or something will do it for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, this ties more into the stuff we do on what we call the inner control box and building, the ability to regulate ourselves and stuff like that. But if the idea of if you don't change it, somebody else will. We all have habits, and I don't like habits. I like routines. And we just finished talking about take out the routine and you reduce the risk. What I mean is this: when something becomes a habit, so even as we're talking about it, I'm always looking, I'm always scanning, I'm situationally aware. Those are my habits. Habits don't change typically. Habits are habits. You have a good habit, it stays a good habit. You have a poor habit, it tends to stay a poor habit for most people. A routine, what I mean is, if you're going to have a routine when it comes to mental mapping, the routine should be that you are always changing your routine. You get what I mean? You're always breaking your mental maps, because you have to realize that as a human being, you are building, creating, and operating off mental maps constantly. So that's what I mean. How somebody scans, say, I'm always looking. Well, tell me more about that. What are you always looking for? I'm always looking at this. I'm always looking at that. I'm looking at the hands of somebody. I'm looking at their face. I'm looking at this, that. I'm looking in cars, all this type of stuff. So that has become your habituated way of scanning. So let's dive into some of the takeaways of this. I had a client the other day, and this was very, 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 he's a firearms instructor, and he's working with me because he has very limited skill set when it comes to the hand-to-hand, other weapon systems, impact edge, all that type of stuff. So he's going through the weaponized program to shore up his skill sets. But he has something very, very powerful that he does that he got off a really good firearms instructor many years ago. And most North Americans, obviously, we are taught to read left to right. So this becomes a mental blueprint for all of us because that's how we read. Our books are formatted that way. We start reading on the left side, move to the right side, reading top to bottom, that kind of thing. And so one very simple drill that he was given is when they are working in different environments, whether it's like, could be CQC, room clearing, different things like that, might even be out like outdoor terrains and you're scanning and walking through different environments, was just, yes, you're scanning from left to right, from top to bottom, but he's made it a habit to scan right to left and bottom to top. Now, that's just one example of a variant in that. But if you're always, like for us, we teach people always scan the palm, always scan the hands first, looking for the palm of the hands. Because if you cannot see, now it's not always going to see the palm, but you want to be able to see through the hand. I'm sitting, so, but if my hand was hanging down, you know what I mean? If you can see, the camera's reversed. If you can see through the kind of palm, you go, okay, they don't have a weapon in their hand. If you can't see the thumb or you can't see the hands behind, whatever it is. So you teach people to scan the hands first. But you want to be careful because although that is strategically and tactically a very high priority thing to do, when you always habituate that, then what happens is that becomes a mental map and you will thin slice just scanning the hands. But 9,999 scans of people's hands reveals nothing, right? So you never see the situation where you go, oh, I can't see his thumb. Oh, I can't see that hand. Oh shit, there's a weapon in his hand. Like complacency kind of creeps in. And so you scanning the hands becomes far less effective because complacency, mental mapping, it's almost like 9,999 scans of people's hands that reveal zero weapons. You start to build an expectation. That expectation is built into your mental map. That's why training, you say, listen, 9,999 times out in the real world, go to West Edmonton Mall, you're going to scan hundreds of, if not thousands of people's hands. You're going to get 10,000 scans in the matter of a few hours, go in December, getting close to Christmas. You're just walking around scanning people's hands. In training, we scan hands all the time and discover weapons. Not always, but a much higher percentage. Why? Because in training, your training partner who you might be doing ground, but all of a sudden as you're getting ready to get on the ground or he's on the ground and his, instead of putting frames in and instead of his hands being where you would think his hands would be, ready to strike or ready to frame, to do whatever, all of a sudden his hand's gone. Well, you know what I mean? The point is that when all of a sudden you pick up on that, you've now had a scan that revealed a weapon. It changes the mental map. It's almost like, how many times do you have to scan and go, there was no weapon, and that becomes expectation and that builds a mental map of expecting to not see anything? How many times do you have to scan in training or not? And when you reveal a weapon, when you see the pin index, when you see that threat cue, for that to change your mental map to where you're almost expecting, a weapon, so it keeps it fresh. Does that make sense? Like it hits the refresh button on that. The quick analogy that I have, and I'm sure Dustin can come up with a better one as our analogy guy, but you have to basically in psychology, one negative thing, if I say one negative thing to somebody, it takes almost 19 to 20 positive things just to bring that person back to a homeostasis, back to neutral. So meaning a negative statement, a negative result is far more powerful than a positive result. So you can have 10,000 scans and go, I'm scanning hands all the time. I've never once had somebody, caught someone with a weapon, never mind a threat to me. But even in training, if you have one or two, that changes it. I mean, how many times do you have to be carjacked to never enter a vehicle the same way? We did a scenario many years back. It was a home invasion scenario. And how many times... what basically share with everybody what happened, what lesson was learned with one trial learning in our home scenarios some years back.
lock your door. That was one of them.
Well,
Very
and
interesting.
That's the one I want, to lock
and
your door.
and
So
and
many
then
people,
when you
when we,
answer your,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say when you answer your door, know how to open a door
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
you can
So
control
now we're
how
on
much
to
you open
two.
your door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Point is, when we ran scenarios, instead of having this conventional, like where someone's in their house and it's like, hey, I'm just going to do a smash and grab, kick the fucking door in, sledgehammer, break it off the hinges, and I'm coming in, come hell or high water, we ran a con. And in our con, as smart, educated home invaders, the con got people to unlock the door, open the door, talk to us, whatever it is. And then there was a time in the scenario where they were able to close the door again. No forced entry, no rushing in. They closed the door to go and do something for us and thinking they're smart. Point is, they failed to relock the door. So they closed the door thinking, okay, there's people outside. I'm dealing with them. I only opened, managed the door, the entranceway, all that type of stuff, closed it. I'm going to now go do this, and this will get these guys to leave. And then all we did was open. When they came back, we were already in the house. And people were like, what the fuck? I thought I locked that door at this. Well, what's the mental map? A lot of people, there's two types of people. People that every time they close their door, they automatically lock that door behind them. And then there's the type of people that come home, they close the door, and their brain's like, well, I got to go out and get groceries, or I got to run pick the kids up here in 45 minutes. And so they go in, they do things. I'm only going to be here for a fraction of a second. Well, that pattern all of a sudden becomes a mental map, and people come home, they shut the door. And so they lock the door when they're leaving for a period of time, or they lock the door only at night when they're going. You know what I mean? Like, these are spots where when you're in a situation, you're going to run more off your mental map.
Greg, can I reinforce this because it just popped in my head?
Yeah.
So, like, it was like last week or the week out or a week before, like literally like junior high girls basketball team going to the neighborhood asking for bottles, doing a bottle drive.
Yep.
Come knocking at the door, and I'm just like, we had a bag of bottles. I'm like, yeah, okay. Close the door, lock it on her. I'm like, she probably thinks I'm a fucking wingnut. Go down, get the balls, unlock the door, give it to her, and then like, but most people would be like, but that was my habit. Like, you come to the door, I'm like, my daughter's on the main floor still,
Yep.
and I'm just like, yes, we came in and got the bottles, but I'm just like, I still, junior high, what a con that would have been, hey?
Yeah.
But
that's where people might laugh or not. But again, the blueprint is right. Criminals use women as decoys all the time. And what age limit is a decoy? You know what I mean? Like, so that's smart. Yeah.
I'll share a quick story too, because I got caught. I caught myself, but I made a mistake last week too. And Brad didn't make a mistake. I did, because what happened to me was on Halloween, I'm sitting in the living room. Our teenage son's giving out candy. And like, this is just the very, very start of the night. It's like 5:40 p.m. So ding dong. So he's like, oh, my buddy, like, first person's here. He's like, oh, okay. So he goes over to the door. He unlocks the front door, opens it, blah, 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 does the thing, gives him the candy, shuts the door, locks the door. And then like 30 seconds later, ding dong, he goes back, he unlocks the door, opens it, gives him candy, shuts the door, locks it. And I'm sitting on the couch. I'm like, buddy, you don't have to lock the door. I'm like, you're going to be there all night long. Like, you know what I mean? And I was like, oh, I'm like, no, you know what? If you want to lock the door, you go ahead and lock the door. But I caught myself. It was like in that life factor moment where it's like, you're going to keep opening it. Why would you lock it? Yes. But then I was like, oh no, don't wreck his good routine. Yep. Like he's got this dialed in. Leave him alone.
100%. Yeah. It's reinforce the mental map that he's built versus that you guys have built for him. 100%.
But it just goes to show that even when you know it, you still have to be sharp.
Yeah.
Because the life factor moments can suck you in, and you make those little mistakes, right? Yeah, and 100%. One mistake can cost you. So
yeah, absolutely. So let's go this. I shared one little thing, right? Like scanning right to left. Let me shortcut this for people. And realistically, this is going to be the biggest takeaway of the whole night. So I just want to get it out there so that if people don't listen to the end, I have more, but I want them to get this as early as we can get this out there. So I think that the best way to, as it pertains to violence, to break your mental or destroy your mental maps is to play a very, very cool game. And the game basically has to be a reverse murder mystery. Meaning, just like I've have clients that have faced violence. I have clients that are facing the threat of violence, whether it's by a former business partner, just relationships that have gone bad. And I mean, between men, I mean, the sense of like, you work together, you were in a business together, one guy rips a guy off. Like, I mean, like serious things where people are threatening to come and murder you, all these kinds of things. I can tell you that when you run across a man that has a group of other men threatening to murder you, murder your family, all these types of things, and most people are like, well, you go to the police. The police can't do shit. And the police have no legal obligation to protect the individual. Their obligation is to protect society as a whole. So there's nothing they could. That's why women who are being stalked have very little. There's very little the police can do until the guy comes and is actively attempting to murder them, or typically they show up after the murder's taken place, and then they just do an investigation and see if they can make an arrest off that. So the point is that you'll see a switch in behavior, and one of the first thing that happens is their mental maps crumble. Like it's like danger around every corner. Paranoia sets in, and rightfully so. But I mean, this hyper-vigilant state kicks in because it's like they're not safe anywhere. They're looking behind every piece of furniture and every tree and everything. And you know what's crazy? That it just doesn't last. They might get into this thing where all of their mental maps, their feeling of like, I know my life is set. Like I have certainty. I know where I shop. I know where I park. All these types of things. All of that disappears. And then what happens, and every person's a little different, but within it, sometimes as short as a few days, but within even a few weeks, and the threat hasn't materialized, guess what starts to happen? People start to run back off their mental maps. You guys saw this video, and I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but the basis of the story is it's a mob hit. I mean, literally a gangland mob hit. And so this individual knows that the mob has put a hit out on him. So they're trying to kill him. And so, in the beginning, the first little bit, this guy's off the radar. All the mental maps are broken. This guy is doing all the things you think you would do when you know these people are trying to murder you. I think it was 8 days. Within 8 days, this guy starts heading back to his house, drives the route he always drives into his neighborhood, pulls into his driveway, doesn't have the garage door, doesn't open the garage door, drive in, close the garage door, like that, and that's not even, I'm not even saying that's the smartest thing to do. I'm saying like, at least it would have been better. But when he pulls into his neighborhood, he pulls right into his parking spot on his driveway pad where he always parks his truck. He nosed in instead of even backing in for a quicker, escape should their need arise. And I don't know why the need would arise. I mean, you just have a hit on your head. But he drives in, throws the vehicle in park in his truck, gets his phone out, and does what he's always done, which is start scanning and scrolling on his phone sitting in his truck. And out of the bush comes the hitman. Runs across the bush. Matter of fact, as he come out of the bush, he's so cracked out from jacking up for the hit, he trips and fucking falls. I mean, gets up, running towards the vehicle. I mean, if he would have been paying attention at all, you got line of sight on this guy. You can see him coming. This wasn't dark out. This was, 6 o'clock, like sunny out still, like, or, light out. And the guy runs right up to the vehicle and just, basically barrel almost touching the side glass and just opens fire. And subsequently, murders the guy. But the point is in that is like, even under that threat, the mental maps are so powerful that 8 days out where you go, well, I guess I'm okay. You know what I mean? the routines kick back in. And, this is what, that's what happened to somebody under that threat. And now I don't know what people will think off that. People say, oh, that guy must have been a fucking idiot or this, I'd be gone, I'd be this. Yeah, well, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth. Everyone's got a plan until it's like you now have to actually commit to that plan. And so the point with this kind of game is, what if somebody was stalking you, hunting you? I like using the term hunting. What if someone was hunting you? The goal or what I like to do with myself is I will play this game periodically throughout the week, and not just for a week, like over the course of a month, a few months, a year, like just, it's something that I bring out and do. And I don't do it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day most times. What I'll do is I get up in the morning sometimes and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to fracture my mental maps. At night I'll be like, I'll sleep on the other side of the bed, or I sleep in a different room. Or you get up and it's like, what's the first thing you typically do every morning? Do something different. When you brush your teeth, what hand do you use? When you put your shoes on, what shoe do you put on first? When you put your jacket on, what arm do you put in your jacket? I mean, like, think of it like a chameleon. If somebody was also really after you and looking for you, they study people. They kind of get a sense of who you are. Like they identify really quickly gait patterns. One of the things that like the FBI and stuff teaches when it comes to their counter surveillance training programs is to just bend your knees and slouch differently or stand up differently. Because if you slouch or if you come up or if you walk with a bit of a tilt, you change the gait pattern. And somebody that is just thin slicing a crowd of people can often identify who they're looking for because they're looking for like a height, a gait pattern, like different things like this. So this mental mapping is, where do you sit down to put your shoes on? Most people, I have my bench in the front and I sit on the bench. Well, sit somewhere different. You know what I mean? And what's amazing with this type of thing is how fucking bizarre it feels at first. It's like just doing everything kind of backwards. Change the seat you sit in your house. You know what's so interesting? When people want to do a threat assessment of your house, just sit in a different spot of your house. Sit on the floor at a different angle and look at your house, and you'll see things you've never seen before. And you'll go, I know my house inside and out. No, you don't. You know your house, and then you've built a mental map of your house and you've filled in blanks. There are things in your house that you don't even know are there or got moved or whatever it is. Because it's just you're operating, it's inattentional blindness. You're not aware of your blind spots. Like just, have you ever sat out in your neighborhood and parked in a different spot and just stood and looked at your house from a completely different angle? You will see different vulnerabilities. You will see different strengths, right? You again, go to a different grocery store. We shop between 3 to 4 different grocery stores. I change the route that I drive there. I park in different spots. And not always. There's times when I run my map and park where I park and that type of stuff, but I try never to go too long. Now it's my routine to fracture my routine. If I've parked habitually in the same spot at the same grocery store 3-4 times, the next time I drive in there and I'm going for it, I'm like, it causes me almost to like an anxiety to be like, oh, I'm operating subconsciously. And I will change my patterns. You start seeing things that you've never seen, that it's crazy how this lights you up in a different way. I'll just stop there because I know you guys have done this and you guys do this. So I just really want 2 things. One, share your feedback on how you change and break your mental maps. But also, like, do you do something different? How often do you do this? How are you guys doing it that may be different than how I'm doing it?
One thing I can share that I do quite often, thanks to the iPhone. So you guys have iPhones, you've probably maybe seen this at times, but like my lunch break at work is at the same time. 3 days a week, I have the same lunch break time. I go to like 3 different places for lunch typically, so it's not always the same place, but it's kind of, there's the top 3. Yep. And so every once in a while I'll get in my car, you get in the car, whatever, lock the door, get ready to go, start the car, take my phone out of my pocket to put it like in the console, and I'll see on the screen there's a notification, look at it, and it's Apple Maps or whatever saying, "Oh, you're 7 minutes away from such and such an address," and like I like same thing. I turn it into a game, and I'm like, okay, like you might know where I'm going, but like you don't know how I'm gonna get there, and you don't know where I'm gonna park, and so it's almost like that reminder of like, yeah, don't let your phone get you. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'll show you. I'm gonna go a different way. I'm gonna park somewhere different. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So same thing. Like it's just a good way and a good reminder to be like, yeah, break that map because
Yeah.
yes, you have some of it is habitual. The time is the same. I'm leaving from the same place. I'm going to similar places.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well then what can I change? And that's the thing I think is you can't always change every single thing. Some of it you could, some of it I could change and I don't.
Yeah.
But again, knowing, control follows awareness. If you choose not to, then understand that you're just taking on a little bit of risk and then you have to obviously make modifications because of it. But so I think that's one thing for me is like when you're not changing something and you're purposely not changing it, at least you're aware of it. And then you can be a little bit more diligent in those moments. And then, yeah, otherwise, same as you, it's like I make a point of changing the way I get there, the way I park, where I park, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the phone helps because it's trying to stalk
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Yeah, it's trying to stalk you. That's great.
Yeah, I think for me it's a lot of the same things, but maybe I'll just share a little bit of a perspective. Is it's all little stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not like there's nothing here that we're talking about that it's like this big drastic eventful thing that you have to do and plan for. No, it's like you literally could wake up in the morning and brush your teeth with a different hand, right? And just really changes the way that it's a mentality, it's a thought process, it's all these things. And it's like, okay, so like instead of going right, go left. You leave in your driveway, go the opposite way, right? And just like it's not like it's this like we talk like the trajectory of something. These tiny little things here after this conversation, you start doing them and sprinkling them throughout your day or through your week with conscious thought. When that trajectory goes in terms of adopting that routine of fracturing your routine and doing things differently are going to yield big results because it is going to rewire. It's essentially going to remap the way that you're thinking. And it's like, why, like the thing is, I forget who it was. Oh, I think it might have been Jim Rohn. He's like, it's very easy to do, but it's also easy not to do.
Yeah.
Right. And this is something that is super easy to incorporate, but equally as easy just to fucking say,
100%.
fuck it, I don't need to do this.
100%. And yeah, I love that point. And I'll do this because again, I want to get these 2 points out there. So the first game I play, and I love Dust that your phone basically is the surrogate stalker, right? Because it is. But is what if someone was trying to get me? Here's an interesting thing. I'll tell you to the extremes that my brain goes at times, and I just find it to be fun. But this was a while back. But I was in the shower, and I'm showering, and I was the thought of mental mapping because I was thinking about though, like when you dry yourself off. For me, my towel goes in my right. I'm left-handed. My towel goes in my right hand, and my left arm is the first thing that gets dried off every fucking time, right? So like that's the first thing that happens, right? And I'm sure everybody it's different. Some people maybe it's the face that dries. Some people wipe their ass. I don't fucking know what you do. Point is, there's a habituated pattern. So my brain was like, oh, I'm fucking breaking my mental patterns today. I'm gonna dry off in a different fucking order, right? So, again, small things, but makes a difference. Then it hit me where I'm like, what's funny? If someone burst into the bathroom, I stand and shower the same way every time. Like you're standing at a certain location in the tub. Do you know what I mean? And next thing you know, within a minute, I've been in every different location and I was dropping down in the tub and stuff that if someone came in and just started shooting, where would they shoot if they shot through a shower curtain where you can't see where the person is in the tub? And I'm like, why am I standing in the center of the fucking, I just thought about it. I stood outside and I thought at the shower, if I burst in and knew someone's in the shower and just started firing through that fucking shower curtain, where would I shoot? I probably wouldn't shoot down at the right. I probably wouldn't shoot up at the left. I'd probably just shoot fucking center mass. And then I was like, well, but a guy hears something, maybe you hear something, you're in the shower, and you sit there and you're listening, like, fuck, did I hear that? Is there somebody in the house? And you're standing right in the center of the fucking shower. I mean, it's just simple, silly little things But this perspective shift, it's so powerful. So this leads into my second part of the drill. The first is, how would I change my mental maps if I knew somebody was stalking or hunting me? Okay. So then you're going to start thinking about things differently. You're going to do things differently because you're trying to avoid. The second part of that, and I just kind of alluded to it a little bit, the second game that I love to play is ask and answer the following questions. How would I commit the perfect mugging? How would I commit the perfect violent assault? How would I commit the perfect murder? And I don't mean it like I mean like if you're a criminal element and you needed to go fuck somebody up, you need to you got to murder someone. Like that's the way into this gang. Or you say, this motherfucker crossed me. This guy's going to testify against me. I'm going to get this motherfucker. I look at it and say, what if you had a group of 4 or 5 guys? There's always these 4 or 5 motherfuckers. You know what I mean? I'm going to get these guys. How would you do it? You know what I mean? Go park outside your grocery store and sit there and start watching people and start asking yourself, if I had to get somebody, mug them, fucking assault them, murder them, whatever it is, whatever evil intent you want to do, how would you do it? And you'll start seeing corners and angles, and you'll see things you've never seen before, but you got to train your brain to see it. Most people wouldn't know. They couldn't even hold the thought long enough to actually let their brain come up with a solution, because the thought of that in and of itself is repulsive to most people. Sorry, Brad, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I know it would probably be, well, not probably, I know it is extremely hard not to be biased in it. But do you run those drills again? I know the answer, but against yourself? How would I get?
How? That's the whole thing with the first one. Someone's coming to get me. How are they going to get me? Where are my vulnerabilities? You know what I mean? If they're getting me again, you have to assume they have your house under surveillance. You have to assume this and that. So I'm not going to fucking sit in the window that I always sit in. The little benches there, and I'm putting my shoes on, my inside lights on. It's silhouetted. These blinds. These are fucking basically you can see the silhouette through these blinds. Again, how do you counter something if your brain has never gone there before? Because I'll tell you something, line familiarization is a powerful ally. If there's Paul used to always tell me there's 2 ways that you're going to lose a violent assault. One is you're going to run out of gas, meaning you don't have the conditioning, you don't physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual to actually deal with violence. You're going to lose your fortitude. You're going to physically gas out. You're going to be you become kindling. You're fucking dead. The second way, someone fights you from a line you're unfamiliar with. That's what we're talking about here. Mental mapping is all about familiarity. So for somebody to fight you from a line you're unfamiliar with, it's much easier for them to do when they take into account your mental maps. You're most vulnerable in the places you're most familiar. And everybody wires that wrong. Everybody thinks I'm safest in the places that I'm most familiar. This is why you have so many fucking idiots that when they're in their car, they do things that are going to get them murdered. They're fucking honking horns and flipping people off and tailgating and doing all kinds of fucking stupid shit. I drive every day, man. I had some fucking crazy motherfucker today laying on his fucking horn, tailing me an inch off my tail. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And I got my 10-year-old with me. And, I had to literally turn to avoid this guy. And this guy was seconds away from following me, which would have upped the level of this threat. And it's and then finally he honks and drives away. And it's man, you don't understand what people are capable of. But you're in your car, you're in your familiar environment, and you think you have this level of perceived safety that fucking is non-existent. You know what I mean? And that's maybe a stretch for what we're talking about. But the point is, we think we're safest where we feel the most comfortable. And so even the most situationally aware person is going to have a higher level of complacency than what they probably are aware of, because these mental maps. And I don't know, we could discuss this more. I think at times you can be free of your mental maps. Because you're consciously breaking them, you're doing all these little things, and it's making you infinitely more aware. But as human beings, this is what we do. You know what I mean? Most people, they go to a hotel, they sleep on their side of the bed. What the fuck is their side of the bed mean? But you get to the hotel, you go, well, I sleep here, my wife sleeps there. Like, that's our side of the bed. And they can't even get a good night's sleep sleeping on the other side of the bed. I don't make my decision because I have my side of the bed. I'll often make a tactical decision to, like, if somebody came in this room, I want to be between me and this person, my wife and this person. Like, and that, you know, and then there's other factors that I might have to take into consideration, but sometimes that's one of them, right? So I don't know. Yeah, like it's these two games of just somebody's hunting you, or like Brad said, change that slightly and say, how would I get myself? You know what I mean? If I was hunting myself, how would I do it? That's gonna reveal a lot of really powerful insights, and it's gonna force you to break your maps. Or the second thing is, and I really like this one because good protectors have a doom on you mindset. Bad guys think evil. Warriors go doom on you. Bring that shit. I'm not looking for it. I just want to live my life. But if you bring that shit to my doorstep, fucking doom on you. Which means violence is about destruction. And it works for both good people and criminals the same. Self-defense or murder is determined after. Destruction is destruction. If you come to destroy me with evil, doom on you, it's coming right back at you, motherfucker. And hopefully in tenfold, because that's what the weaponizing process does, is you study it. You don't just say it and think that you're capable of it. You fucking study it, you train it, you weaponize it. But the idea is when you start thinking, how would I do this? It gives you permission to think evil. That means learn their plays, study what these guys are doing. How are they doing this? What are the most successful guys doing? I mean, study Ed Kemper, study some of these serial killers, study Ted Bundy, study these guys. Understand the difference between the posturing predators, including the posturing serial killers, and the blitzing serial killers. There's a reason they're doing the things they're doing. So, but what you'll find when you start studying is go, hey, listen, this guy's pretty fucked up and insidious, and he was one of the most prolific serial killers in the world. But after studying what he's doing, as well as other serial killers, this guy had a lot of room for improvement. You start recognizing where they were weak. You start recognizing how intended victims fucked up their shit and got away or survived or whatever it may be. And although that's most normal people can't even condone that type of thought process, what is the value of that? Is when you find somebody who happens to cross paths with you that wants to harm you, you understand how they think. You understand the vulnerabilities they're looking for. So change the fucking game and don't let them find those vulnerabilities. Don't let them posture their way close to you. You're going to see an attempted ambush, which is really not hidden that well. It's only hidden from the people that have never thought this way. I mean, wolves are pretty stealthy motherfuckers, but sheep, are fairly easy for a wolf to hunt. So, there is far more vulnerable people in our society than there are weaponized people in our society. So bad guys, their camouflage isn't all that fucking great because it doesn't have to be. I use this analogy all the time. You guys have heard this a million times, but like hunters, right? Fucking camouflage, basically ghillie suits, fucking, don't wear cologne, downwind. Fucking you're using every trick in the fucking book because hunting's not easy. But if you turned around and just had every animal you could ever want to hunt, and for food and subsistence, and you had them they were just in fucking ridiculous levels of abundance, all in a certain area, you wouldn't have any fucking camouflage. You would just fucking walk out there because the smart animals would run, the dumb ones would be there, the weak ones would be there. You'd fucking shoot and you'd eat well. So there would be no need for all of this stealth and stuff. Well, that's bad guys. Bad guys hunt in what we call urban environments and rural environments, but they hunt where fish in a barrel. The sheep are plentiful. So they have no interest in taking out the strongest in our society when they just go, there's so many slow, weak, and dumb and unwilling people in society. I'll just fucking feed on them. And that's what they do. So, you know, for anybody that's even remotely doing the things we're talking about, weaponizing, breaking mental maps, I mean, studying the strategies and tactics and basing it off actual bad guy blueprints, criminality, the study of all that shit, like, you're so far, you're on a different level than what these guys are ready for or are planning for or prepared for. That it's just not even funny, right? And but the work still has to be done. It's not enough to just intellectually understand it. So, I mean, I love this topic. I mean, clearly because it's been an hour went by. I felt like 5 minutes talking about this. But is there any way or any final things you guys want to say? And I think we'll probably just land it here.
Nothing from my end, though.
Yeah, I don't think so, actually.
Okay. So hopefully you guys got the takeaway that I promised. I mean, literally, if you do this, and I think Brad will just end it with what you said. This is simple stuff, but it's simple to do and it's simple to not do, right? Matter of fact, if you had to weigh the two out, it's simpler not to do it because your habituated mental map and pattern is to not do it. So you are subconsciously competent at running your mental blueprints and your mental maps. That is what most people will do. If you do this, most people find it very uncomfortable and they don't stick with it, right? And so they'll say, "Oh yeah, I did that a little bit, yeah," and they just and watch how many times in a day you catch yourself falling right back into your mental map programming. And again, if you can just entertain for a second, if you were the guy hunting you will be shocked at how many places you find vulnerabilities. And how easy it would be for them to get you. Whereas once you start playing this game and you start changing that, you become infinitely safer very quickly. And it really isn't that hard to do, right? So hopefully that there's a takeaway for everybody and everybody plays with this a little bit. You got to commit to it for a number of days. You might not do it all the day in all instances and all circumstances, but just start integrating it in at periods of times in different ways, and you're well on your way to making yourself infinitely safer, right? You're rewiring, reprogramming your brain. You're becoming a much harder target. So, all right, everybody, that's it. We'll finish it. Dustin, Brad, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it, as always. Dustin, you'll be away next week, right? You're off saving the world, operating in foreign countries and under the extreme threat of some intense fun. Have fun with that. Be safe with that. We'll look for you in a couple weeks to be back on. Brad, you'll be back, I think, next week, hopefully. Otherwise, it'll just be me talking, which I do a lot of talking anyhow. So, all right, guys, that's it. To everybody watching, thank you guys so much. Stay safe, stay weaponized. Chat again soon, everybody.